Hey, this is Mark Henry, author of Dancing with Energy, Healing, Magic, and Mysticism, here to talk to you more about the occult and the paranormal. I just wanted to mention a couple housekeeping things before we begin. And that is that I recently released a attunement in my Etsy attunement store. So that would be the Om attunement, which Om is the sound of creation. And it is used by people who meditate and various traditions to connect with the divine, establish peace, harmony, serenity within oneself. It's very healing, and this particular attunement will allow you to channel and evoke that energy without chanting. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'll put a link to my Etsy store in the description. I'm also having a sale. It started just before Labor Day, and now it is continuing on for a few days. So if you are interested in getting a little bit of a discount on the store and the items in there, then check it out. I think it's going to be up for about another 2 days. All right. So let's talk about today's video, which is near and dear to my heart, and that is the dangers of the Rougarou. So if you are a fan of monsters, then you probably know of the Rougarou. So the Rougarou is a cryptid that is usually found and talked about in southern Louisiana, although there have been Rougarou sightings in other southern states like Florida and Mississippi. But basically what a Rougarou is, you can think of it as a Louisiana werewolf. So it has the body of a man, but the head of a wolf or dog-like creature. And it's considered to be very dangerous. They stand about 7 to 8 feet in height. In addition to being called the Rougarou, and forgive me if I get the French incorrect, it is called a Loup-Garou, which basically means wolf man shapeshifter, something along those lines. And the Rougarou is a particular creature that has had a lot of sightings across Louisiana. Now, it is not the only cryptid in Louisiana. There's also the, I believe it's called the Honey Island Swamp Monster. So I don't know, to be honest with you, too much about that. But it's kind of more of like a Bigfoot type of creature. So that is kind of like the little bit of the folklore about the Rougarou. Now, I grew up hearing a lot about the Rougarou because I was born in New Orleans, and then I kind of stayed in the general area. So usually when people talk about the Rougarou, they hear it from their relatives, like their aunts, uncles, or their parents, saying, you know, if you don't behave, then the Rougarou is going to come after you, going to attack you. So it's kind of like a fear tactic with little kids. And then as you get older, you hear a little bit more about the stories about the Rougarou. Now, as far as the sightings are concerned, there was a sighting in 2016 in Houma, Louisiana. Remember that name. We're going to get back to it. In Houma, Louisiana, and it was actually in a residential neighborhood, and there was a resident who actually saw the Rougarou because they were surrounded, the neighborhood was surrounded by a lot of trees and forests. Houma is kind of a fairly rural area, and that is where you tend to see a lot of cryptids, including the Rougarou. You'll usually see it at night, and you know, it makes sense that in this particular instance, it made me think that, okay, if this is true, then it could be the fact that a lot of development, deforestation, and those sorts of things are creating situations where animals of all kinds, you know, coyotes and things especially, their living space is being displaced, so they find their way into the neighborhood. Now, in general, the Rougarou will stay away from people and kind of stick into the forest, which is where people see them. A lot of hunters and fishermen will find them, accidentally, of course. Now, in 2019, getting back to hunting, there was a guy, his name was Scott Pace, who was hunting in southern Louisiana, and he came across the Rougarou, at least the label. He described it as like a dog or wolf being, and he was in his hunting sort of camp, and he saw it, and he was looking at it through his scope of his rifle, and he saw it, and it was actually with another creature that he couldn't identify. And as being a smart guy, and he was from a distance, he felt like that the Rougarou being was aware of his presence, and that the Rougarou was telling him, okay, you need to leave. At one point, he kind of felt like he was definitely in danger if he didn't, so he kind of quietly left with looking behind him with his rifle in case something were to happen. So those are the two most notable sightings in the recent years. Now, where did these stories come from? I like to think about, history and folklore, and that it seems like probably came from French-Canadian immigrants who settled into Louisiana, and in general, French settlers from France who came here, and that's where a lot of the Louisiana gets its culture from. So there's suspicion from cultural anthropologists that this is where a lot of the Rougarou stories come from, probably from those early settlers who have been around a while and perhaps have seen some few things I guess if at that time, several hundred years ago, that if there wasn't a lot of city per se, and it was more woodlands that you'd come across beings such as this. Now in Homa, because remember about Homa, that they actually have a Rougarou festival there in late October. And they have, and it's part of Louisiana culture, we have parades. So they have a Rougarou parade, and they have a queen that is anointed, and they have a festival, so you can have Cajun food, they have music, and they have Rougarou costumes and people dressing up like the Rougarou. So I always thought that maybe I'll travel down to Houma one year and check out the festival. And by the way, as far as other cryptids are concerned, there are festivals for these other things. For example, the Mothman, there is a festival and where all of those sightings occurred for those 2 years. So what is the story? What are some of the stories about the Rougarou? One of the predominant one is that the Rougarou was created by a local voodoo priestess or witch as a being. And the story goes that the Rougarou, when it was first created, would, in order to I guess, get it off of himself or to transform it, it can transfer from one person to another. So maybe the first Rougarou went and bit somebody, drew blood, and that person would become the Rougarou and then retain that for 101 days. After the 101 days, it could bite somebody and then, again, transfer it to someone else. So it's not a pleasant thing. It was considered kind of like a curse as far as the story goes. One of the ways you can prevent the Rougarou from biting you or kind of encroaching on your house is that the old folks tell a story that you throw 13 objects in front of your door, and that the Rougarou would go and the Rougarou can only count to 12. It can't count to 13. So once it gets to 12, it'll start over and keep doing that. Why 12? I think it has something to do with the hours on a clock and counting and keeping time, because the Rougarou can only come out at night, so it has a vague awareness of time. So go through 12, can't get 13, keep going over, and that what it'll do is it'll stand there all night until going in circles in his mind until daylight comes. Okay, it's sunrise. Now I've got to get out of here. Take off into the woods. So that's pretty much it. That is the how you protect yourself from the Rougarou. Interesting stuff. Well, anyway, I just want to kind of give you an introduction to this particular cryptid that is really popular in Louisiana. So please subscribe and like. I will talk to you in a future video, and I'll put a link in the description to the Etsy store and the Etsy sale at the end of the video in the comments and description. All right, take care. Hope you have a good weekend. Hope that your Labor Day turns out pleasurable. Bye-bye.